We are live. Hold on. The viewers can't hear you guys yet. Hold on. Probably heard an echo for a second. Okay.
Jim, I got a DM you something. Just talk in DMs for a second. Spawn it?
Great. Thanks, Raz.
Welcome. Try spawning it, see if you got it, all of it.
Well, guys, welcome back to Burning Subjects Terminal.
Welcome to the Cincinnati, New Orleans, and Texas Pacific.
What?
Cincinnati, New Orleans, and Texas Pacific, CNO and TP. It's some subsidiary of the Southern Railway.
Okay.
Raz built a locomotive from it. The CNO and TP MS4s. Cool locomotives. And so Raz is live right now. No, Andrew.
Yep, it is me.
First button closest to the front of the cab is to turn it on. The middle button is the headlight, and the third button closest to you is the firebox. You hear the sounds of some Pokemon train building in the background, everybody.
Yes. So.
Anyway, I'm ready to change maps when you guys are.
Well.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Guys, for the if there that the if there is anyone here, tomorrow I'm turning 17 years old.
Congrats.
And
Awesome.
the thing is, though, I can't stream tomorrow, and that's why I decided to do it today. And today is a very special occasion, since tomorrow I'm turning 17. I got a list here. Of my top 10 favorite Steam excursion stars.
Oh, your favorite excursion locomotives?
Yeah, not just in America, though. Around the world.
Well, anyway, Raz, I'm also ready for the map change. Anyway, yep, right. Oh, and I did do the last vote. We're just waiting a couple minutes for the map to change then. Holy shit, I'm hauling ass. And not for long. So, Andrew, what is that? What is this little list of yours?
This little list consists of my favorite steam locomotives that have operated in excursion service. The favorites that put on a show when they're in operation. The ones that are either underappreciated or the ones that generally spark joy in anyone's heart. But especially mine, for the experiences that they've casted upon America forever.
Not necessarily poker magnets included.
There's actually no, not really, no, yeah. But really, it's just the locomotives that make me feel happy.
Happy.
Very, very happy.
Basically in sync.
Yes.
I will be right back. I'm gonna wait for the server to load and then.
Keep in mind, this is a chill stream. There's no time limit. We can just take our time. That's the thing about Burning Subjects Terminal. There's no schedule. You don't need to do things immediately. We don't have a time limit. We just chill, bro.
Well, then again, it is 10 minutes. It's 10 p.m. on my end. Well, 6 minutes 6 after 10 p.m. on my end, I should say. But whatever. Yes, you have permission to say cock.
Oh, cock.
Cocking Nora.
Cock and Nora.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a peaceful Steam. Oh, and before anything, what did you guys think of the music video?
I didn't watch it yet. I'm sorry.
That's okay, bro. It's okay. I mean, especially considering the music video is about a foamer magnet, bro.
Well, in the meantime, you may have heard the music. You wanted me to use this for 734, right?
Oh, yes.
Too fucking bad. It wasn't built as a broad gauge locomotive.
Oh, you're using it for one of those.
Oh, by the way, Ryan. Andrew.
Yeah.
I got an epic bombshell for you.
Yeah.
So apparently there's like this little locomotive that runs on compressed air. You want to know the total boiler pressure?
What is it?
9,000.
Are you kidding?
No, 3 air tanks acting as the boiler, each one with their own pressure of 3,000 psi. I thought I was gonna make you scream.
Ah!
Your face is beautiful.
No.
I did it again.
9,000.
Oh, but this actually requires an even better clip, I suppose. Hold on, if I can find the clip in question, but because it is wholly necessary. What did you say about it? Relatable. Yep. It's over 9,000.
No, it's in this case. It's not over 9,000. It's exactly 9,000.
Yeah, but it's the 9,000 meme. Anyway, are we still going to wait for Raz, or are we going to keep calm and carry on? Meanwhile, the server has indeed switched maps to Ashland and Olive Hills.
Right now, we're just chilling.
Okay, so is there like a set list of locomotives, or can we just...
I have a set list, but we can do the list whenever you guys feel like it.
You mean you don't have them written down in a specific order?
No, I do. I do have them written down in a very specific order, but what I'm saying is, you guys can... I will start the list when you guys want me to.
Well, I'd say start it now, as my clock has reached 10:10 p.m. No relation to a certain red Santa Fe type.
If only you could see my face on the stream. I've been practicing trying to do... You know how Jim Carrey does the Grinch face?
Yeah. Yeah, but in all honesty...
Yeah?
I think we should, as Monty Python would say, get on with it!
Get on with it! Oh my god, I'm so Australian! No, I'm not, am I?
On with it!
On with it!
Okay, what is the
Huh?
what is the 10th locomotive for?
Number 10 is Texas and Pacific 610.
Steven, did you hear that? No, he's not in the stream anymore.
Oh yeah.
And
No, I'm
we
sad.
don't want.
No, I'm
We
sad.
don't always that's right. God. I forgot. Shit. Holy shit. Yeah, he's not on our. As in, not on our.
So one of us has to talk about 610 for you.
As in, not on our.
No, we.
As in, not on our. As in, not on our podcast anymore. I completely forgot. I'm an idiot. Mother. Yeah, we just kind of forgot about her, and we don't want to get too deep into it. But of course, Texas and Pacific 610. This
Well,
is not only.
I can probably say I want to start on it. The reason I love this locomotive so much is genuinely the fact that it's one of those locomotives that most people should know about but don't. And at the same time, that's why I love it. It has a lot of uniqueness about it. It's the sole survivor of the TNS 210-4s. And not to mention the only 210-4 to ever operate in the preservation era. And if you hear this thing in operation, if you hear this, it's like hearing a lion some sort. How do I describe 610's sound?
Oh, wait, hold on. It was joined? No, don't.
It's really...
Nothing. It was nothing.
It was really... 610 is really... oomph. Has a lot of oomph in that locomotive. I mean, yes, it's not really fast, and it's not very famous, but then again, most of these locomotives that I have on the list aren't very famous.
But here's the thing, though. 610 is actually the most famous out of the Texas State Railroad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because, as we all know, Texas and Pacific 610 operated in the American Freedom Train. Not to mention on the Southern Steam Program. And yet, for some reason, it seems to be the oddball out of all of those.
Because it only operated in the state of Texas, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it's...
everywhere else, it was just 2101 and 4449.
just sad.
Anyway,
really sad.
Who here is interested in technical specifications and a little rundown of the class? Because some of it is
Ask me something first.
What?
Apparently, 610 was originally going to be restored by Jensen.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
But the details go as follows. At first, to have the group willing to restore the locomotive for the AFT was Jensen. But as the project was running way behind schedule, Jensen was fired and replaced.
Oh.
Good.
So if you want someone to talk about the specifications, I will.
Yes.
Let me because I already got the whole page for the class up on steamlocomotive.com. So the Texas and Pacific's 210-4 Texas type locomotives, which 610 was one of, were classified together as the I-1 family because they had 5 batches listed as I-1, I-1A, I-1B, I-1C, and I-1D, totaling 70 locomotives built between 1925 and 1929, all of them rolling out of the doors at the Lima Locomotive Works in Lima, Ohio. So you had 10 regular I-1s, and then all those 4 other batches in total had 15 engines each, which racked up the total to 70. Fun fact, if
these are early Lima superpowers. Their ash pan moves with their trailing truck, unlike a conventional design where the ash pan is mounted to the frame.
I think that may also be a bit of a reason why they were somewhat of an oddball. Yeah, 70 of them were built in total between 1925 and 29. And here's the fun fact: they were collectively numbered 600 through 69.
Nice.
69, dudes.
And then in terms of related geometry, 63-inch diameter driving wheels, 255 psi boiler pressure, and holy motherfucking god, a pair of huge 29 by 30. Yeah, 29.
29.
29 by 32-inch cylinders.
Damn.
It gave you 92,590 pounds of tractive effort. That's nothing to say that.
Nothing. I told you,
When you
6
think about it,
610's underrated, and you know it.
and when you think about it, that's almost as much tractive effort as a goddamn shovel-on Challenger.
I mean, you're actually completely right.
You're still several thousands of pounds off there, though.
But still, the shovel-on Challengers, even though they made the class famous, they were pretty weak in Challenger standards.
Because on my end, they're fucking blown up.
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah, that's technical specifications on 610 in terms of her class and tractive efforts.
Yeah.
Which, I guess I'm kind of the guy for.
And honestly, I've said it before. 610 is completely underrated, completely neglected out of the picture. Why?
Here's the shocking thing. I agree. Even if it has an Alesco preheater in the most hideous possible placement. Shut up! Out at the boiler barrel and literally hanging on a shelf up in front of the smoke box.
Shut mouth.
That's
We would like to have a word with you, pal. That's beautiful. Shut mouth.
Look, honestly, I actually like it. It makes the locomotive look like it's wearing one of those Russian hats.
Also,
If it's Russian, if it looks Russian,
It's a Texas class, so it would be a cowboy hat.
oh, by the way, one thing that I do like about 610 though, it has a flared smokestack.
Yes. Anyway.
In Texas, except for everything's bigger in Texas, except for dicks. They remain small.
I mean, you're not wrong.
But what's next then?
Okay. Number 9 is Central New Jersey 113, which I'd like to talk.
Yeah, wait. Oh no. Owen is entering evil after mode.
Okay, it does have its own Wikipedia page, though. I'm not going to bother with looking up the class for now. I guess I can give you the tractive effort.
Well, actually, before we begin talking about...
wrong.
Guys, before we begin talking about the history and the statistics, I want to talk about the reason I love this locomotive. It's fairly straightforward. It's adorable. With the big chunky boiler...
It's big chungus.
The big chunky boiler and the tiny drivers, and the way it bobs from side to side in operation, it just oozes charm for me. It's like...
I wouldn't have... Go on.
It's just one of those locomotives that makes me feel like really... That makes me smile every time I see a video of it. Bobbing from side to side, that little 3-chime whistle, and a tiny tender for it. And for a big boiler, it's actually For a little switcher, it's pretty fast, too.
Are we talking about another locomotive now?
Yeah.
J113.
Yes. And now you may
113.
talk about the statistics.
Okay, so apologies if I get things wrong because I'm forced to look it up on Wikipedia. Apparently it's a B7 switcher. The third one built out of 5 total, so I'm going to assume that 5 of them were built numbered 110 through 115 in 1923. In 1923, and in terms of
Actually, how many were built again?
5.
it said third out of 5 total
3
of the B7 class.
If there were only 5, that means there'd be 110 for 114. 2015 would not exist. Because remember, 110 still technically counts.
But it said that the engine is the third out of 5 total. So
that would be 111.
Oh yeah, 111 through 115. Sorry, I got the counting wrong. But yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me rephrase that. The third out of a total of 5 B7 class switchers, all of them presumed to be built in 1923, in June of that year, maybe. I mean, that's at least when 113 was delivered. They were all built by, I want to say, they were built by Alco. I don't know where, though. And in terms of tractive effort, we have 45,847 pounds.
Damn! That's not bad.
As I'm trying to say, 4,500,847 pounds, provided by a pair of 23 by 26 inch cylinders, 200 psi boiler pressure, and 51 inch driving wheels.
Why do you need that much power in an 060?
Well, because maybe they would actually be good with local freight trains.
I mean, then again, you're talking to the guy who designed tank engines with 41,000 pounds of tractive effort.
Not to mention, switchers have to move heavy cars around the yard.
Jim, you say you don't know what factory was built?
It's out.
You're going to say the Premier Workshop in Schenectady, New York.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if it was 1923, that was the time all but the Schenectady works have been shut down.
Oh. How very interesting.
That's odd because wasn't 1401 a Richmond product? A Richmond locomotive? Wasn't it? Wasn't 1401 a Richmond locomotive?
Yes?
Yes, actually.
So, and that was built in 1926, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
So we're talking about
J113 right now.
So not all the Alco factories were closed down, but Schenectady by 19.
Well, I can confirm 113 was from Schenectady, New York.
All right, yeah, I believe that, but I just wanted to correct you there because, many of the PS4s were constructed including 1401, were constructed at Richmond.
Come on, Raz, put your package in, please.
What was that?
So are we done talking about 113, or are we still continuing on?
We still gotta talk about 113. Shit, I actually didn't research the engine that much, so. Alright. So, let me just.
You're going to look up some historical info on the engine.
Yeah, they're not. In 1945, the railroad had changed their class to 6S46, six-wheeled switcher, 46,000 pounds tractive effort. By 1951, though, all locomotives of 111 through 115 were placed out of service in favor of the new diesel. So the first one was 111, 112, 113, 114, and 115. there was no 110, or the 110 may have been a USRA 060 copy, because the C&J had like a ton of those.
I already had a little bit of a hunch when, I corrected myself on that.
In 1953, the Philadelphia Reading Coal and Iron Company, now Reading Anthracite Company, had bought 113 and used the engine at a colliery in Locust Summit, outside of Ashland, Pennsylvania, until it was last used in 1960. It became the very last C&J steam engine to be steamed up. 113 also ran a few fan trips with C&J 774 in 1954.
I actually didn't know that.
So yeah, it was a running mate to 774. Funny, but
You say it worked for the Reading Coal Company.
Different company from the actual railroad.
No, I get that. But here's the thing.
Is it
with the railroad tug that worked in that area?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, met its demise last year.
Yes. 113 was then stored outside of Locust Summit for many years, and as a result, suffered a massive amount of deterioration. And there were even some trees growing around the locomotive. The Philadelphia Reading and Coal and Iron Company essentially decided to donate 113 to the historic Red Clay Valley Inc., located in Wilmington, Delaware, in 1980. In 1986, the locomotive was purchased by Robert E. Kimmel Sr. and was later moved to Minersville. Work to restore the engine to operational condition began all the way back in 1999 and took more than 20 years for it to be fully operational again.
29, 26.
Not more than 20 years. Less than 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's a typo. I'm just reading the Wikipedia article. So that's a bit of a typo. The cost of restoration was over $600,000.
Not bad, actually.
And had countless, for an 060, that's a lot.
Yeah. But then again, you got 45,000 pounds of tractive effort. That's not bad.
Yeah, and had countless hours of volunteer labor.
Not to mention, it was restored outside.
Yeah, 113 was also restored with minimal protection from the elements, much like 765 was, and no heavy machinery. So many of the parts of the locomotive had long been missing before the restoration had even started. As a result, many of the parts had to be made from scratch, since there hadn't been any commercial builders that produced parts for steam engines in decades. One example is how the volunteers had to make a wooden cast of the original 3-chime whistle by measuring an original C&J whistle, which was available to them. The engine was finally fired up after more than 5 decades of inactivity in late fall of 2012. The Railway Restoration Project 113 organization conducted a test run on the same day with the engine, also doing some more test runs in 2013 and 2014. And of course, in 2013, it had a few runs with 425. Same thing. The same thing would happen the next year, of course. But it wasn't until 2015 that the engine officially got her boiler jacketing reinstalled. So, bit of a trade-off there.
Well, at least it got it in the end. So that way, the heat is better concealed, so the engine got better insulation.
However, I will say, though, that boiler jacketing actually has an adverse effect when it's displayed outside, because it traps a lot of corrosion, which wears away at the internal wood. That's why a lot of display engines are seen without it.
I was about to kind of say that as well, actually.
Yeah. So 113, of course, still operates. However, the Minersville, it's from what I know, it's completely stored outdoors with only really a tarp to protect it.
From what I heard, that could actually be more harmful.
Uh-oh.
This, I want to say that this year, just to make sure it's still working, not for like any major excursion runs or whatever. So it is kept. It's in reasonably good hands. I can say that for even though it's stored outdoors and everything. So yeah, that's the story of CNJ 113. Now, of course, it's on display at the Minersville. It's still operable. Don't worry, though. It's still operable, but it's stored right at the Minersville station. So I guess if you want to see the engine, I guess feel free to, because it's right there. All right, what's the next engine?
All right, hold on, let me go back to the list. Sorry, my phone started overheating for a second. But anyway, number 8, Ryan, you're gonna love this one. Number 8 is Lake Superior Ishpeming 33. And I say
I can help you with that.
And I say 33 specifically. Well, 34 has a toxic fan base, but 33, her time on the Hocking Valley Railroad really is something to watch. Because yes, it was cool seeing 33 on the Ohio Central, but she didn't really get to do much on the Ohio Central. Yes, she looked like when she was first built, but she only hauled 3 coaches at a time. And quite frankly, nowadays, she actually doesn't run that much, which is why she's so down on the list.
She didn't look exactly like she was built
on the flip side, the Ohio Central did a better job at restoring and maintaining it.
Yes.
Because Hocking Valley...
Is that right if I tell the full story of 33 for you guys?
Well,
since you're the LS&I scholar, I think you should take it away.
But hold on, I'm not done finishing the reasons why I love this locomotive. If there's anything that I like, it's big 280s, like really big and powerful ones. I don't know about you guys, but I love the wheel arrangement 280 because it's a compact and efficient design. And you know that if thousands and thousands of railroads around America have bought 280s, you know they're a good wheel arrangement.
Then again, there's a bit too many.
There are too many, but there are some 280s out of the bunch that stand out in a great way. And 33, the Lake Superior Ishpeming 33, is one of those amazing 280s that just stands out because of the sheer power and the sheer sound up here and get thundered by.
Plus that fucking whistle she got right there.
Damn, yeah, you can say that again, Dan.
That bitch is beef. That bitch, her voice is beefy.
It's a beefy locomotive. That's really the sum of why I like 33.
Yeah.
Now, Ryan, you may...
Think of it as a human, and think of it as that one buffed up woman that will definitely crush your balls if you ask her to have sex with you.
Basically.
With gorilla grip, mind you.
Basically. These locomotives...
Hans, go back to fixing the transmission. No horny until you're done fixing it, but don't.
Anyway, though, Ryan...
Transmission or slightly bigger cannon, you say?
But anyway...
Oh my God, Hans! This is the 1000th time I've told you this. 9!
9 millimeter.
Are we gonna get on with the list already?
As I said, we're taking our time. But if you guys are ready, then Ryan, you can talk about the history of number 33.
All right. I'm going to read off the Wikipedia page. And this one is entirely mine, not just by someone else. So I know what I'm talking about. Number 33 was actually initially built for the Menacing Marquette and Southeastern Railroad as engine number 44. But then in 1923, said river was blocked by Ellison-I, so it was renumbered 33 and joined sister engines on the Ellison-I, which you know what. And it was initially used for.
You mean for heavy iron ore?
Iron ore. Well, here's another. Fuck. Between 1925 and 1927, most all of the SD-1s, except for a certain toxic fan-based one, were given booster trucks beneath their tenders, which increased their tractive effort from 60,484 pounds to 67,725 pounds.
Damn!
And over 70,000 pounds.
Hold on.
Number 33. What?
I was about to ask if I was allowed to do a slight intervention. But otherwise, I'll wait for you to be finished. Keep going.
Okay. With number 33 resumed to pull iron ore between Marquette, Nagani, and West Ishpeming in Michigan, Upper Peninsula. But as the 1950s progressed, it was reassigned for heavy switching whenever needed. But by 1962, even Ellison-I sites were being sliced, so 33 was subsequently retired. But then, became among 12 of the 280s on the Ellison-I to be sold to John A. Zerbel, a former Ellison-I employee, who went to operate all of the 280s on his new Marquette Shore and Mountain Tourist Railroad. But he only operated 4 of his 280s at all. And 33 instead sat idle until 1965, when it was purchased by a group of people who also went to start a tourist railroad, the Salt Creek, over ex-Detroit Toledo and Ironton trackage that went to Wellston, Ohio. However, that trackage was already ripped up before details of the line could be finalized. But then in 1968, they decided to change the name of the land line to the Hockey Valley Scenic after purchasing the former Monday Creek line. Number 33 was restored in the former C&O's Parsons Yard Roundhouse and was fired up in 1972 after 10 years of no fire inside with the firebox. And it performed that. It did good for that tourist railroad for many years until 1995, when the HVSR lost its original engine house as its land it stood on, which was purchased by another owner. So 33 was retired by HVSR by the end of 1996. If anyone wants to talk about its Ohio Central life beginning 2003, be my guest.
Well, what I wanted to talk about was quickly how many SC4s were built in total and the tractive effort and its related geometry, because I believe that that's something where we kind of got things wrong, at least in terms of the tractive effort. Apologies for that. In total, there were 4 SC1s built, which eventually were all collectively renumbered 32 through 35. All of them were built in 1916 by, I want to say Baldwin, right?
Yeah, it's Baldwin.
You're not wrong.
Okay. Okay, and in terms of tractive effort-related geometry, from what I remember, they had 57-inch diameter driving wheels, a pair of 185 psi of boiler pressure, a 185 psi boiler pressure, 57-inch driving wheels, and 26 by 30-inch cylinders, two of them, which initially generated 55,948 pounds of tractive effort. It was a 734 that was theoretically upgraded to 60,484 pounds of tractive effort in the preservation era when the Western Maryland refurbished it by increasing the boiler pressure to 200 psi, yet apparently it couldn't reach that.
You're
At least that's what I think.
The SC1s always, from what I've known, always had 200 psi.
Well, SteamLocomotive.com here said 185.
SteamLocomotive.com can be wrong sometimes. From what I read on JStore.org, the SC1s were upgraded to 60,484 pounds of tractive effort throughout the steam era, and 33 was among those that were upgraded to 72,000 pounds.
Because of the booster unit on the front tender bogey, or both tender bogies?
Just the front one.
Well,
but
to be perfectly honest, I didn't know that all the SC1s got the 200 psi boiler pressure in steam days. I genuinely didn't know that, so apologies.
It's okay. I thought that way as well. But anyway, in 2003, Jerry Joe Jacobson approached an agreement with the HVSR to trade a diesel number 701 for number 33. It was going to be restored for 2004's Train Fest, but then was pushed to one more year because of work delays, I guess.
I think that was after 63. I think it was also delayed even further by 6325's axle failure that year as well.
Oof.
But then 33 is test fired in November of 2005, but it never pulled any more trains till 2008, which wasn't even very much either. I guess by that time, Jerry Jacobson found bigger locomotives. He decided he wanted for the Iowa Central.
Yeah, he was of course running. He was still running 1293 at the time, and he was going to rebuild. He was going to rebuild 757, but then
of course he decided Age of Steam Roundhouse should be built, and he sold the Iowa Central to one of the most disliked rail companies of today.
Yes, Genesee in Wyoming, or as I like to put it, genocide in Wyoming. Because every railroad under their own.
Then late 2010, 33 was rebuilt again. It was test fired in 2018. But I guess due to firebox issues, it was pulled from service again in 2020.
No, it wasn't that. The real reason was because the engine's due for its 1472.
Of course.
Well, can I just say this before we go on to the next one?
Yeah.
I applaud the Age of Steam Roundhouse specifically for the reason of them selling the railroad in order to build them a shed. I mean, that's like, what's it like? It's like, I don't know, but I mean, he literally sold the only landscape he had to run these locomotives in order to give them protection. That's like selling an entire highway in order to build a giant garage for antique cars.
I think personally that he could have just, used the profits from the railroad to actually build the roundhouse instead of selling off all the track he could have used to operate his trains on.
But, so if he really told them to build a shed, We know what clip we need for this.
My bloody shed, man!
Yeah, 3 wise words from James May.
What did you do to my bloody shed, man?
But I get why, Andrew, you think the SC1s are actually the most unique of the LS9. But it just pains me to think that way because there's also 2 still surviving LS9 locomotives, but that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah. But
maybe it's because maybe it's because the SC1s were the most limited in production.
But honestly,
but whatever. Let's
how could you not love an SC1? I mean, yes, 734 is overrated, but it put on quite a show during the excursion service. You have to admit. Now, anyway, shall we move on to number 7?
Go ahead, please.
And we're going to be leaving the United States for a quick minute, and we're going over to the UK. British, yes.
British. Yeah, tea. Have a cup of tea. In bad weather, worst dental hygiene. Mary fucking Poppins, Britain.
And terrible fucking traffic. Anyway.
Right on red.
Now for number 7, which is London Mid-Scottish Royal Scot number 6100.
Oh, Royal Scot.
Royal Scot herself?
Yep.
6100. Yes. I can't believe you mean Scott. Or do we mean number 6152, the King's Dragoon Guardsman?
Oh, the conspiracy! It's a conspiracy, man!
It's a conspiracy, man.
May I tell the story about these engines? And
yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Oh yeah.
Firstly, how many Royal Scots were built? Just as many as those TNP Texas types. 70. When were they built? Between 1927 and 29. And they were collectively numbered 6100 to 6169.
69, dudes!
In terms of tractive effort, out of the top of my head, they had 31,500 pounds of tractive effort. Let me just double check that. 33,150 pounds tractive effort. Sorry if I already forgot if I got it wrong earlier, but whatever. That amount of tractive effort. 33,150. God, I can't speak. And that tractive effort was generated through a boiler pressure of 250 psi, a threesome of 18 by 26 inch cylinders, and 81 inch diameter driving wheels.
81 though, 81 inches. Damn.
Yeah, it worked fine in the United Kingdom. Remember, the Great Central improved director 440s like Butler Henderson had those as well. So what makes Royal Scots / the King's Dragoon Guardsmen so popular? Well, here's the conspiracy theory. In 1933, I am kind of reading this out loud from the Wikipedia page of the class, but in 1933, the LMS was invited to send a locomotive and train to the Century of Progress International Exposition in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States.
And so, 6100 was sent. Was, quote unquote, sent. Because, so the 6100 was busy.
I was saying they decided to send one of the Royal Scots.
Yes.
Let me get to this. Trust me, Andrew. This segment is in good hands.
Okay.
And specifically, they also selected one that was due for an overhaul. Basically, they decided to select number 6152, the King's Dragoon Guardsman, and they overhauled it and made it a bit more American. But interestingly, maybe there was some kind of thought to maybe send Royal Scot herself, so the class Pioneer, number 6100, instead. But then they decided, we'll just keep Royal Scot here. Well, meanwhile, we'll dress up the King's Dragoon Guardsmen as Royal Scot instead.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea, chaps. Let's do it.
They would do the same thing 6 years later by sending 6229
Hamilton as class Pioneer 6220 Coronation, but that one didn't work quite as well because one was red and the other was blue. But anyway, as for the trip, this Royal Scot locomotive did really well. It actually looked pretty good, apart from the stupid-ass nameplate on the front of the smoke box door, which wasn't necessary, in my opinion, but whatever. But here's the conspiracy theory. When the engine returned back home,
Hold on. Can I add something very interesting about her trip? Apparently, during her trip, the Royal Scots traversed Tennessee Pass, a line that has 3 to 4% grades, if I recall. Now, I'm not sure. With no issues, from what I can see, no issues at all. So
I think it did through the United States and Canada decently. But here's the thing. When the locomotive returned back home, some said that the engine's identity would have just simply been going back to the King's Dragoon Guardsmen. But here's the conspiracy theory. There's a long-standing belief that once the two locomotives had swapped names and road numbers, it stayed that way. So, even though it may say Royal Scot on the engine that's preserved, there are people who believe that it's actually the King's Dragoon Guardsmen in a permanent disguise. That is that's the big conspiracy theory in question. But
yes.
For one reason or another, it has ensured her survival.
And before we talk about the statistics of the locomotive and her interesting restoration, I'd like to talk about why I love this locomotive so much. 6100 is a bit of an oddball when it comes to steam locomotive preservation in the UK. It's a 3-cylinder 10-wheeler with smoke deflectors. And not to mention that it was involved, that one of its classmates was involved in a very, very dangerous experiment. And you guys know what that experiment was.
I will say, though, that in Britain, it wasn't the only concern that had these cylinders. Because the Southern Railway going away. Was the Lord Nelson 3 or 4 cylinders?
Lord Nelson's were 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
But in terms of Royal Scots, there are 2 of them in preservation. Because in addition to this one, there's also confirmed non-emasculating classmate number 61. It's something very delicious. As I'm trying to say, there's also number 6115, Scots Guardsmen in preservation. But basically, yeah, there's that.
Yes.
Though it also has to be mentioned that the smoke deflectors were necessary because initially they were fitted without smoke deflectors,
And
it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that they were kind of needed.
And it took how many designs of smoke deflectors until they got a good one?
Before they actually go on the work.
How many designs was it again?
7.
7 variations of smoke deflectors before one worked? Damn.
So, going on, I think it was around, while the Royal Scots were, of course, full machines and everything, The initial designs, which were, by the way, were designed by Sir Henry Fowler, who at the time was the chief mechanical engineer on the LMS.
Again, but they were actually authorized by Henry Fowler, designed by Herbert Chambers.
Thanks for clearing that up. But eventually, of course, for anyone who knows really anything about the LMS or British railways in general, in the 1930s, specifically I think around 1933, a huge CME named William Stanier came to the picture. And his philosophy was, I think it was standardization for the most part, and overall improving the designs. In fact, he would go on to create some of the greatest steam locomotive classes in all of Britain, such as the Black Line, the Ebbs, the Princess Royals, and Princess Coronations. Now, when it came to the Royal Scots, the original designs had a few issues. One of which was the fact that the Royal Scots only had one piston ring per valve, which made them quite easy for cracking.
And wearing out quickly. And so each of them was fitted with 3 later on.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
But also there was those were the B1s that had the seats that broke at high speeds.
But speaking of high speeds, one of them did in fact derail due to another problem, which was that the springs in the pilot bogie weren't strong enough to prevent lateral oscillation. But I think that means that they kind of slid a little bit from side to side, which indeed means that one of them heated itself off the track at 70 miles an hour.
Yes. Also, another problem, but specifically with the ones constructed at Derby rather than the ones constructed at either. Were there any Scots constructed at Crewe, or was it just Derby and British?
The first 50 were bought by the LMS and built at North British. The remaining 20 were later built by the LMS themselves at Derby.
Yes. So the ones that the LMS built themselves at their Derby workshops had, as what Chris Stevens stated, a fundamental Derby problem, i.e. axle boxes were extremely prone to overheating.
Oh, yes. We need the clip from Chris Eden Green's episode of Steam Locos and Profile on this again. Because needless to say, the failures on the Royal Scots axle boxes can make you fucking scream in frustration.
Yeah, so in 1943...
Hold on, I got it here.
Yes, it's everybody's favourite axle boxes. We brought them up multiple times on Britannia designs, but on the Royal Scots, the records can make you apoplectic. In 1930, there were 25 axle box failures. In 1931, there were 75 failures. And in 1932, there were 102, which means there was an average failure of 1 every 5.5 days.
Insert catastrophic screaming.
But as I'm saying, in 1943, it was eventually decided to rebuild the Royal Scots in a more standardized way, i.e., single bell-pair fireboxes rather than...
fireboxes before.
I know, but it's...
different ones instead of chunky Midland parallel ones.
Yes. Rather than the parallel boiler, they had I think it was somewhat of a one-piece boiler.
It was tapered anyway.
Yeah, tapered boiler.
Possible stuff.
The tapered boiler provided, not to mention, of course, the smoke box. The smoke box was, of course, changed. Now, some people, and several different smoke deflectors, new types smoke deflectors were actually traveled on them. So David? Well, that's from what I actually learned that from what was it? Express steam locomotives on the LMS or something like that. And
all that trialing was during the LMS's. I want to say during the LMS's construction with the old Midland design. That's when they had to go through 7 different types of deflectors before they found one that worked properly.
Yeah, right. But the deflector design was changed. Rather than the giant metal elephant ears, they were a lot smaller. Sort of like what you will find on the Boston May Pacific. Now, keep in mind, these rebuilds did start in 1943. But delays upon delays, which included World War II and many other aspects, meant that the final rebuild was completed in 1955.
Also, that's what happens when you kick an Austrian out of art class.
Of course. But as I'm saying, the Royal Scots were not the only locomotives that were rebuilt to this configuration. In fact, both the smaller Patriot class, which was numbered in the 5500 series, and even some of the Jubilees were actually rebuilt to that particular configuration, if I remember correctly.
Oh, the Jubilees were designed directly by Stanier, whereas the Patriots
I saw a rebuilt Jubilee somewhere that was.
Jubilees. Yeah, the Jubilees were built directly by Stanier, so they couldn't have been rebuilt. They were just modified.
And since we're talking about the Royal Scots, we cannot forget the one on that probably one of the more infamous examples of the class. 6399 Erie.
Yes, the unofficial 71st Royal Scot. Slightly longer frame, and it's a semi-compound locomotive because most of the directive effort-related geometry is the same, but the middle cylinder was reduced in diameter to 11.5 inches.
Absolutely, yeah.
That did bring up. We did actually calculate the directive effort for that a little while ago. I have to look it up again.
This train has only reached an hour long, and we're not even halfway through the list. Well,
but as I'm saying, the 6399 was, of course, a high pressure. It was a slightly modified Royal Scot, fitted with a Schmidt high pressure boiler. Got it.
It got the directive effort. It was 26,610 pounds. Oh yeah, but speaking of that boiler, yes. The interesting thing about this boiler is that it had 3 chambers. Apparently, the one you want for the directive effort is the last one, I guess, with the normal pressure of 250 psi. But above that, there were 2 super high pressure chambers. One with, Andrew, wait for it, 900 psi, and the other one with an average of 1,600 psi.
That is.
Meanwhile, Andrew appears to be bored. But needless to say, it was just mad enough that it succeeded in killing the man when one of the ultra-high pressure tubes decided to explode, which in turn meant that scalding hot steam spewed out of the firebox doors into the cab, killing a guy at the superheater company and badly scalding one of the guys who either drove or fired the locomotive on that unfortunate day. This resulted in Fury being sidelined and eventually rebuilt by Stanier into actually the prototype for the rebuilt Royal Scots. Number 6170, British Legion.
Can I also add the fact that that engine made very little revenue for the LMS and was towed and spent was towed rather than under steam for most of its life. Now let's skip ahead to preservation.
Yes. Can I talk about this part?
Yeah.
So, as we all know, when 6100 was, well, inevitably chosen to be restored, which actually took a long time to, return 6100 to operation. When she wasn't right. Well, first off, when they pushed her into service, the paint was still drying, even though the paint job was fucking gorgeous. But anyway, I digress. 6100, when she was, first pushed into service, as I said, she wasn't quite right. When she was, the valve timing, the spool valves, which are the valves that control exactly which end the steam enters in order to push the piston from one side to side, weren't set properly on the inside, on the valve gear. And so when it was in operation, it sounded like it was drunk.
May I also add that the locomotive was burned while being transported when the low loader was being transported and caught fire.
Yeah, it caught fire once. And
although it looks really goddamn cool in LMS red, which shut up purists, it's a gorgeous fucking color scheme for rebuilt stock. But unfortunately, when it entered service, the paintwork wasn't dry yet.
I said that already.
Fuck, I didn't hear that.
And by catching fire, you mean spontaneous combustion?
Or as
I don't know what caused it, but I just know that it caught on fire while being shipped over.
2101 first time?
Yes, but apparently Royal Scott was not so badly damaged that it was.
Well, I just wound up the T1.
But yeah, after a couple of years in service, 6100 was taken out of service for another much longer rebuild. And thankfully, she was rebuilt correctly in the end. And now you can see her running on plenty of tourist railroads. And now that brings me, because I actually wasn't finished talking about why I love this locomotive so much. I already talked about why I love the conspiracy. But when it comes to her actual functions, I love it. She's one of the very few steam locomotives in Britain that I actually enjoy hearing her whistle. Most British steam locomotives just sound like or that. But this one, it sounds like if you take an N&W hooter and gave it a just a slightly higher pitch, and it's perfect. It's not annoying.
And a little squeaky, but not too ridiculous.
It's not annoying. It's one of those whistles that I enjoy.
Still doesn't beat an A4 or a BR chime whistle.
Yeah, but it's one of those British whistles that I still enjoy. And on top of that, watching the locomotive in motion, it captivates me because I always wonder exactly how you sink 3 cylinders into a quarter like that. And I always try and see exactly which cycle is which when the locomotive's in motion, trying to see which piston, which cylinder is acting at which moment. And watching it, even though it's supposed to be an express locomotive, watching it slowly climb up a grade is very captivating to me. And not to mention...
Wait, you actually pulled some freight trains?
No, not freight trains, but slow excursions.
Oh, you mean like just a back and forth run on a tourist railroad or a heritage railway?
Yes. And of course...
I would play along the lines of commuter service, but whatever, I don't know.
But yeah. And not only that, who doesn't love a steam locomotive with some great smoke deflectors, too? And
I guess all looks are subjective, but it does really suit the Royal Scot.
it really does. But
I will say, you needed them.
yeah,
I will say this though. I would like to see a new build Royal Scot, but in original Chambers condition. Albeit now.
same.
In fact, in order to shut up the crybabies about, it's actually 6152, the King's Dragoon Guardsman. Let's make a replica of 6152 in original Fowler and Chambers design.
Yes!
And eliminate all the major problems with it while you're at it, without resorting to the standard rebuild treatment.
I'd rather rebuild 6133 Cameronian because it held the record before Scott on the LMS, before Scotsman on the LMR kind of beat it out.
Yes.
But
you guys can clear.
But on to number 6. So I assume.
How long have we been talking about Royal Scot now?
I don't know. But the next one is a very, very simple one. And I'm actually going to go solo on this one. Number 7.
All right. I'll mute myself.
Number 6. Reading 1187. You should have seen this coming.
If you don't mention how many of them were built and the directive effort, I will do that for you later.
Yes. But before I get into this locomotive's history, which is my favorite part about it, one of the coolest things about this locomotive is how unique it is. It's so small. It's so obscure. It's so weird. But I love it.
It's not exactly obscure, but okay.
It is so... It's small. It is adorable. I love it.
Actually overrated in a degree.
I love how adorable this locomotive is. And I love the fact that, well, no matter what, somehow it actually managed to be saved in some way or another. And with the very few amounts of footage that are on YouTube of the locomotive running, I enjoy every second of it. From that footage of it passing a window, to footage of it at the iron company blowing its hooter, to just pushing a gondola. I love watching this thing run. It's like watching like a puppy kick around a ball or something. But yeah, it's one of those locomotives to me that oozes charm and is just adorable, and I just love it. But anyway, before I go on to another huge tangent, 1187 was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1902 and classified as an A4B. And, well, for the next 30 years of its life, it served as a yard switcher, which, with 22... Wait, how much power did it have? 26,000? What was it? I'm pretty sure.
There were 28 A4Bs built in total.
And the tractive effort?
I'm going to consult my very own episode of local profiling for this one. But I do remember that the first 14 of them were in a straight numbering lead, with 1187 being the class pioneer. So the next 13 were numbered 1188 through 1200. And then you had a one that was numbered 1240, and then 5 more that were randomly numbered 1246 through 1250.
Why?
I don't know either.
But anyway, you must tell us the tractive effort.
Yeah, here comes the tractive effort provided by myself in one of my own videos. Shameless plug, sorry.
Yeah, go check it out. It's cool.
And they were just perfect. 15-inch diameter driving wheels, a pair of 16 by 24-inch cylinders, and a boiler pressure of 200 feet aside. You would be looking at a tractive effort of 20,890 pounds.
Which?
You heard that?
Yep, 20,980 pounds. Which, ironically, is actually more than the Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal number 15. But anyway.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but It's actually less tractive effort than my favorite Reading locomotive, but you may continue, please.
Anyway, we already know most of it, but after 1187 was retired from the Reading, the Colorado Fuel Company bought the locomotive for switching service, of course, and
then E. Brooks ran a plant in Birchboro, Pennsylvania.
yes, in which it actually worked alongside another Reading, homegrown Reading locomotive, a tank engine, 1253 was it, right?
1251.
1251. Well, either way, they worked alongside for a while, and you can actually see some footage of 1187 at there as it's being passed by an excursion train. Well, 1187 spent quite a while there and then, of course, we all know the Strasburg Railroad bought 1187 for excursion service. And keep in mind, this locomotive, which is only an 040, a Camelback no less, was sent to Strasburg under its own power. It wasn't delivered via any other type of motive power, no helper service. The locomotive traveled all the way to Strasburg under its own power, making it the first one to do so.
And the only steam locomotive bought for the railroad to arrive under its own power.
Just decades before 611 would show up. But anyway, 1187 arrived at Strasburg under the cover of darkness. And so, well, for the next couple of weeks, the locomotive was painted up and prepared for excursion service, which sadly she only spent 6 weeks in excursion service because the Strasburg Railroad found that it was difficult to fire it with bituminous coal, which is obvious because, as we all know, it's a fucking anthracite burner. But anyway, before I go on an angry tangent again about that, after the 6 weeks in excursion service, she was pulled off the main road and was used to help with the runarounds at the station. And then came her final days, when she was used for one last excursion, in which she got to pull an excursion for, what was it? Some sort of fair.
NRHS convention?
NRHS
Yes.
convention.
Or NRHS excursion in general?
Yes.
It was a special, and it only halted that trip it only halted that train for like part of its total journey.
Yes. But
Of course, I guess the journey happened to take it across the entire Strasburg Railroad, but
yeah, that was her final excursion when she was.
yeah, I think it went from Lemon Place to the East Strasburg Station.
And then she spent the next.
entire Strasburg trackage.
Yeah, 4.5 miles.
Then she spent the next 40 years exposed to the elements. No care, no love, no life. Until of course, last year, when the Age of Steam Roundhouse decided to get the locomotive, which Strasburg actually helped move to their area. It's curious.
I guess it could be like a form of an apology to the locomotive because, from what I've heard, that Strasburg did have long-term plans of giving the locomotive a cosmetic refurbishment. It's just that they didn't get around to it, or they never had a full-on concrete plan to determine when they were going to start working on it.
But yes,
So,
It's
basically, Age of Steam buying it is a blessing in disguise because now that cosmetic repair work can commence much sooner.
but yes. Ever since the beginning of last year, 1187's been under an intense cosmetic refurbishment, and most likely might be looking brand new in a couple of years. And quite frankly, it's going to be the best that she's looked in decades. And must we give a salute for the last Camelback in service? Well, besides 774, which is another waifu. Anyway.
774. And if you look in U.S. locomotives, here's 1187's tender being test painted.
Wait, test painted? Let me see.
Yeah, to see, I guess people getting training on how to paint like railroad logos and numbers, etc. Or maybe they're also testing to see if the metal can still hold it, like if it hasn't been completely rusted through, like if it's just like surface rust or something.
Oh yeah.
And also, this may not concern 1187, but I've heard word that the Age of Steam Roundhouse can't actually restore their locomotives cosmetically. Some of them, like B&O 1190, I saw in a Facebook post.
Well, some of them they can't, but others they can. And the funny thing is, before we move on to the next one, I actually have had. I love this locomotive so much that I've gone on tangents of bringing it back to service. I know I'm a bit ridiculous.
I'm sorry to call you that, Andrew. Also, I mean, we do have to work together on a new version of 1187.
Yes, we actually do.
The locomotive for the Gmod, for the Cylindercox Gmod Discord server.
Yes.
No, Cylindercox Discord server to be used on train build.
But before we move on to the next one, would you guys like to hear the summed up plan? Well, it's a small plan, and it's just like it's a thought, and most likely it just won't happen.
Go ahead. I'm all ears.
But here's the idea. So 1187, if restored, could just operate small trains around the Age of Steam Roundhouse, giving as a tour guide. Slow speed, minimal coaches.
Those just act like that one Southern Railway 060 switcher, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Or basically,
how are they gonna restore 1187 without the apparatus knocking on their freaking door?
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
Me and Owen were talking about that actually. One, she'd need a new cab made of metal, obviously.
Than steel. Yeah, because of course wooden cabs on a camelback is just
no.
It's a no-go.
No.
It's a moisture paradise. But also, I don't think the FRA has anything necessarily against refurbishing existing camelbacks.
But
I think that, starting in 1910, the biggest issue was, they were outlawing, or like the predecessor organization or whatever to that, they were outlawing and completely banning the construction and design of new camelbacks, following a few too many incidents where the right-hand driving rod could snap and ran through the bottom of the walkways, which could potentially kill the engineer.
Yeah.
But this was only more so coming on camelback locomotives that were designed to operate on the main line for running passenger trains at reasonable speed.
And that's
1187 is just a slow speed yard switcher.
Exactly.
You'd have to be, so it wouldn't be able to go fast enough to snap a driving rod.
Yeah.
You'd have to do something very spectacularly stupid
to do so. And not to mention with a locomotive built in 1902. But, yeah.
I will say, though, speaking of camelbacks, considering rod snaps can happen at high speed, there is a rumor about the only surviving CNJ camelback that may tick off some people, and it may, rustle some people's jimmies, but,
you're saying that number 592 reached 100 miles an hour once, right?
It was reported to have reached 100 miles per hour while carrying a film of a tidal weight boxing championship. So now that
actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, but there is Yeah.
Please go on, Owen.
There is unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any scientific evidence that this happened, and it was not like Pennsylvania Railroad 460 is run, which was heavily covered.
Okay, but let me say one more thing before we move on to number 5. Andrew,
yes,
I made an error regarding 1251. That locomotive was never owned by the Colorado Field Iron Company.
Oh,
As soon as it was retired from the running, it went directly to a preservationist.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now what's number 5?
Number 5. This locomotive, we are going all the way to Sweden.
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 Oh wait, should we get Golden here?
Hold on, let me. Fuck, I don't think he's in.
We're going to Sweden, boys.
I don't think he's in the server right now.
Somebody say something about Sweden?
Yep.
Yeah.
The next.
You know, Meatballs, PewDiePie, Sabaton.
Saboteur.
Yes, that's Sweden. Is it 11:49?
You're close. You're very close.
Let me take a guess. If it's Swedish, then Hull, Chelsea, and Wakefield 909.
Nope.
What the fuck?
Did it ever leave Sweden?
I actually don't know much history about this. All I know is really just I love watching this locomotive run. It's a unique. Huh?
Is it the steam turbine?
Nope. But here's look. This should probably give you a hint on the locomotive.
I
Hmm?
think it actually might be 11:49 because
It's a sister.
the same class.
Mm-hmm.
Let me guess. Gold taught you about this engine.
Well, I love watching this locomotive just gallop in general. It's a unique It's a unique locomotive and a great change from the lineup of American 280s with outside cylinders and the hundreds and hundreds of British steam locomotives without high-mounted headlights.
Wait, inside cylinders. So it is 909.
Nope, it's 1040.
What the fuck is 1040?
Specifically 1040.
Hold on. Holy fuck, Andrew! You mad lad! That engine is actually preserved in the Netherlands.
Oh, I didn't even know. I just watched the videos and I knew it was a Swedish steam locomotive, but
Hold on. I'll check the picture of it in the European Locomotives channel.
It's the exact same class as 909.
yep, it is a E2 class 0280 consolidation and not the other E2. But anyway, you may find the history and the tractive effort. But before that, I'd like to continue talking about why I love this locomotive so much. It's a very, as I said, it's a very good change from the hundreds of 280s that are in the world. This one is very unique. It's a 280 with inside motion, buffers, and a high-mounted headlight. And not to mention the tiny tender. I love how this looks. Look, it has the high-mounted headlight of Big Bertha, the skinny boiler that I like on certain 280s, and it's also got the inside motion, which makes it even more unique.
Yes. So is it the LNER V12 of consolidations?
Basically.
Or the Great Eastern, I don't know what they classified them as. Because I know LNER are classified them as V12s, but getting off topic.
I didn't look up the class quantity and years of fabrication yet because I had to respell my train in Gmod, but let me actually do that now. SJ, right? Yes, Or SJ is the railway company.
I think SJ is the SJW is it's the railway.
Hold on, the SJ fine. Hold on, let me actually look.
Oh wait, it's just the SW, I think.
Okay, I think E2. 90 of them were built starting in 1937. Let's see. I don't know when the class was. When they finished construction of the E2 class, but I may have to look up Wikipedia as well to double check that. But yeah, construction started in 1937, and there were 90 of them built. Now let's see, what the fuck does Wikipedia have to say about E2 specifically? Oh fuck you! It doesn't say anything about the construction of the E2.
Well, I'll tell you one fact. Originally, most of them started out as 080s.
Okay, but in terms of tractive effort, though, holy crap, they're actually quite weak. 20,000 pounds of tractive effort, though. And most of the stuff is actually first written in metric measurements. I just noticed that they did start out as 080s. And most of the tractive effort related geometry is actually first written in fucking metric on Wikipedia. Let's see what steamlocomotive.com says. Let's see. Oh, they got it different. They say 26,024 pounds. Let's see. If you get the cylinder sizes correct between the two, 500 by 640 millimeter, or 19.69 by 25.2 inches. Boiler pressure, apparently it's 11.8 bar. And I can't find the boiler pressure right now in the charts on Wikipedia, but it does say so on steamlocomotive.com. So that's 171.1 psi. And wrapped around the driving wheels, 1,387 millimeters, which equals 54.6 inches. So apparently, steamlocomotive.com says that results in 26,024 pounds of tractive effort. But yeah, they were fitted with, in terms of valve gear, what's interesting is that they were fitted with the German Heusinger valve gear, which is basically identical to the Walshart's valve gear that was used basically in Britain, America, and anywhere else, really. It's just that, Heusinger invented pretty much the same kind of valve gear independently of Walshart's, who was a Belgian dude. So, yeah, that's my sense on it. But, yeah, number 1040, it was actually, what's pretty cool about it is that it is preserved at the ZLSN in the Netherlands, which translated. Okay, hold on. Pardon a bit of Dutch here. It stands for Zuid-Limburgse Stoomtreinmaatschappij, which means South Limburg Steam Train Association or Society. And they operate on the so-called Miljoenen line, or Million Line, I guess, between the towns of Kerkrade and Schuin op Geul, whatever. But yeah, they operate that locomotive, so it operates in like the southernmost province in the Netherlands. So yeah.
So Jim, do you think you'd visit 1040 at some time, maybe?
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't planned on visiting it, nor do I know if the locomotive is operational because they are actually getting their hands full with a big project because they, due to the fact that they operate rather old Swedish steam locomotives, they are in a bit of a they're in a bit of a negative position compared to other steam societies in the Netherlands, which operate German steam locomotives. So therefore, they had to make a deal with the VSM to actually take one of their Ballard 52 decapods instead. Did you hear that, Dan? Fuck, he's muted.
Well, you guys can probably see my preference on this locomotive. It's a very...
There's one bit of snazzy bit of painting on it from the picture that I
it's classy.
Red paint on the wheels.
Yeah.
Like red tires on the pilot and driving wheels.
Honestly, it's a classy locomotive. It's not as powerful or as, well known as the others. In fact, we could barely find information from what you could tell. But I love how classic it is. It's really nice. And not to mention seeing it in operation. It's like, the whistle is like a meh. But hearing it actually work it's peaceful. It is a peaceful locomotive. For once. But anyway.
Andrew, do you know this guy?
What guy?
Never mind. Hey, Andrew, good news.
What?
I think it is operational. It operated last month.
You gonna go see it, Jim?
It looks a little bit more weathered, but it's still pretty much operational now.
You gonna see it, Jim?
Or whatever.
You gonna go see it?
I'm not sure. I didn't plan on going to the ZLSM yet, and I already have a trip planned for the VSM because I'm a fucking slob for German locomotives in terms of European rails. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are though. Then again, you just.
As the Germans would say, Entschuldigung.
Well.
Which is German for sorry or apologies.
Are we done talking about 1040 right? Holy crap, we got 4 people on the stream right now.
No, don't.
3 people.
Tyler Green keeps spamming messages in your chat. It's the live chat. What do you expect? It's just. But actually, shall we see what he said? My favorite steam excursion star is Florida East Coast 148 because it double-headed an excursion with Canadian Pacific 972 and pulled the Forgotten Blue Comet nostalgia excursion in the mid-70s. If there's any locomotives... Oh, this guy wants us to talk about the R1 mountain types from the Boston and Maine.
Can I?
What?
You're breaking up on a.
Hold on, Andrew. You may have to leave and rejoin. Okay?
Is that better?
We can hear you now. That's a bit better, I suppose. Yeah.
But looks like Tyler wants us to talk about the Boston and Maine R1 mountain types. Maybe
Did any of them operate on excursions?
Yeah.
No.
No, but they were good locomotives.
And also, bad news, Tyler. Andrew already has a set in stone list for this video, so we're just going to go with that.
Yes. But as I said, we're taking our time with it. But shall we move on to the next one?
Please.
Number 4 is none other than the original John Bull.
Okay. You want to go slow on this one too?
No. But I will mention before we talk.
I would love to volunteer for this segment because it did operate. It did operate on the Camden and Amboy Railroad, which was located in Jersey. So,
well, before we talk about the history of this very, very old locomotive, I'd like to talk about why I enjoy it. Simply, it's fucking old. And it's wonderful. It's a classy locomotive with a very interesting design. Not to mention the beautiful green paint job it has, and not to mention the amount of fame it's gotten in model form. But one of the craziest things is that this locomotive operated excursion service. For a locomotive built in, what was it, 1836, was it?
Yes. Yes. 1831.
1831, and it operated excursions. What are the chances of you ever seeing a locomotive that old run again? I mean, last time...
Also, it was... Due to the fact that it was one of America's earliest steam locomotives, it wasn't built in the United States, but in the United Kingdom. Specifically by Robert Stevenson and Company in Newcastle upon Tyne, simply known as Newcastle, the most populous city in the north of England.
And not to mention, one of the most unique things about this locomotive is that it was the first steam locomotive in the world to ever be fitted with a cow catcher.
Absolutely. That's because the cow 101. Yes, because the cow catcher, it's also, dare I say, one of the oldest steam locomotives in the U.S. period that isn't a replica.
Yes.
Because what is it? I think the Tom Thumb is a replica. I think the best friend of Charleston is definitely a replica because it's boiler.
Yeah, the best friend of Charleston went. Yeah,
because an irritated fireman thought it was a good idea to shut off the safety valves.
And then I guess the boiler was like, "No, you're gonna do that."
Yep.
Also, I did calculate the tractive effort because it only listed most of the related geometry.
You calculated the tractive effort of the John Bull?
Yeah, I was curious. The Wikipedia page didn't list the boiler pressure, but I did look it up on the internet itself, and I found a page that said that the boiler pressure was just 70 pounds per square inch.
Huh.
And when you combine that with 54-inch driving wheels and a pair of rather small 9x20-inch cylinders, shock of horrors, you only get a rather low tractive effort of 1,785 pounds.
That's actually not bad for a locomotive that old.
It's an early 19th century locomotive.
That's actually better than I originally thought, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was thinking like 8,000 pounds of tractive effort, not 17.
Yeah.
17, nearly 1,800, by the way. It's 1,785 that it got.
Damn. Well, we already know most of the interesting parts. But Owen, you may take it away.
Absolutely. The railroad it was built for was the Canada Amboy Railroad, and it was the very first steam locomotive in New Jersey period. Now, the Canada Amboy, of course, would eventually be incorporated into the standard railroad of the world, otherwise known as the Pennsylvania Railroad. But more of that, the engine. So when it was on November 12th, hold on, I'm trying to read. He apparently during the locomotive's unveiling, there were actually some very dignified people there, including Napoleon's nephew, and I think actually one of his many marshals, Prince Murat.
Napoleon?
Well, his nephew, that happened to be named Prince Murat, rides behind the newly delivered locomotive over a short test track. So, until the railroad was completed, the locomotive was placed in storage. Horse-drawn cars served their construction efforts until 1833. The CNA applied both numbers and names to their locomotives. Now, actually, this was apparently part of a class, from what I can tell. No, it was actually named Stevens after the CNA's first president, Robert L. Stevens. However, though, regular use of the engine crews began calling it the Old John Bull, a reference to the cartoon. So it actually wasn't originally known as John Bull, from what I know, from what I figured out. Rather, it was named Stevens but they started calling it after. And it started out as a. Okay. Anyways, as I'm trying to say, it was called John Bull after an English cartoon in a way.
Basically, from what little I know, John Bull is supposed to be the British equivalent of Uncle Sam.
Yes.
Like the United Kingdom's big patriot figure.
Yes.
I want you to shut up. Anyway, continue.
Now, of course, the CNA was soon absorbed into the United New Jersey Railroad and Canal Company, which in turn merged into the Pennsylvania Railroad in 1871. And the engine, I should say, the engine was retired in 1866 when newer, more powerful engines, such as, I assume, the ever so common 440 came into the picture. And then we get to the boring part of steam locomotive development in the U.S. at least. So, the engine in 1885, it was actually in 1883, it was displayed. The Pennsylvania Railroad actually displayed the locomotive at the National Railway Appliance Exhibition in Chicago. In 1885, the Smithsonian actually accepted a donation from the John Bull from the PRR as the institution's first large engineering artifact. So, now, of course,
who's here?
Jordan?
Oh, Jordan, yes.
Yes, the third piano player.
But anyway, as I was trying to say, I think it was. Now, of course, I think the locomotive would remain at the Smithsonian for the longest time. There was a replica built, I want to say around 1939, which was displayed at the World's Fair. Now, that engine did operate at you, but the original John Bull was preserved at the Smithsonian. Then, in 1980 or 1981, I think for the 150th birthday of the locomotive, the Smithsonian decided to actually restore her to working order and take her out on a run on some old tracks near Washington, D.C., where the Smithsonian is located. However, it was only operated for that, for the briefest amount, even because at the end of the day, the Smithsonian wants to preserve as much historical integrity of the locomotive.
But then again, we still have to admire that the John Bull was fired up at all in these eras. I mean,
Yes.
We don't even have footage of the original rocket in operation.
Yeah, true.
So to have the John Bull even operate after 150 years is astonishing.
Absolutely. I'm really super keen on vintage steam like this, but I gotta say that is not too shabby indeed.
Yeah,
It's impressive.
See these old locomotives in person in operation if you invent time travel.
Or if you just fire at Train City.
Or if you make
Gmod.
yeah.
Don't give me any bad ideas.
But yeah, after
justice though.
But after just a couple of weeks in excursion service, it was taken out because, well, it's 150 years old. But honestly, we have to admire that, just like with 1187, just for those couple of weeks, it was wonderful and beautiful, and we should cherish those moments forever. Especially since with how old it is, it's most likely that the John Bull will never operate again. Even if
Yeah, I mean, I bet
Really?
because like I said before, the Smithsonian wants to preserve as much of the historical integrity of the unit as possible.
exactly.
Now I do get it. Now I do get a little annoyed when, let's just say, the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania decides they don't want to have 7002 or 1223 restored because we don't want you to replace the firebox, even though it, like, that's like the most, dare I say, that is one of the most littlest changes you could do to those engines.
Well, guess what, Owen? I remember weeks ago when someone pointed out that you can't replace the fireboxes on those locomotives.
Well, if you make it all sealed, yes. But if you have some like copper lining or thermic siphons, maybe. But it would just. But as I'm saying before, but the John Bull I do get because it looks like if you replace too many parts at the end of the day on a locomotive, it's essentially going to eventually turn out a replica.
Yeah, and plus, as we said, 100 and actually, how old is it now? 190 years old. It's 190 years old.
Yes.
It's almost 200.
Yeah, it's almost 200 years old. Imagine if they fire up for 200 years old.
Fat chance that happens.
That's not happening. Look, no matter what you say, it's not happening. As much as we'd love to see it, it's not happening. It's just sad. But as I said, we have to admire that this was even done at all. I mean, who in the right mind would actually do that again? I mean,
I will say, though, that there are some old 440s that are still in operation, like the EO,
yes,
which I don't think is a replica whatsoever.
But those locomotives are from either the 1860s or the 1880s. This is from the very, very beginning. We're never going to see a locomotive this old operate again. And that's why I love it so much, because the amount of footage we got, the amount of historical integrity this locomotive has, the amount of effort and love this locomotive needs and has, is why I love this locomotive so much. It's very easy to see why, and I'm quite frankly annoyed that most people don't acknowledge it as a retired steam excursion star. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, Penzi.
I do. I do acknowledge it because I knew about that it was actually fired up for a brief time.
I'm talking to you, Penzi Productions, and I'm talking to you, Christopher Kovacs.
Well, not everyone is as. Well, the thing is that not everyone is as interested in the job. Well, keep in mind these videos are heavily opinionated. Not everyone is going to put fucking 290 as their first choice.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, Andrew, all these lists focus mainly on 20th century locomotives and not 19th century ones.
Yeah, but
think about that.
I mean, then again, Stephen put the General on his list.
Well, yes, he did. But anyways,
let's move on to the next engine.
Yes, and yeah, just one more saying, I love the John Bull. But anyway, now down to the final three. Number 3, New Hope and Ivyland, number 9, also known as SMS, number 9.
Or I actually forget its U.S. Army number.
Or United States Army Transportation Corporation, 4038, was it? 4030 something. I forgot. 4030.
Wait, that's the same class as 4039?
Well, yeah, it's the U.S. Army 060 tender locomotive. Here. Let me
But
show you.
before we begin with the history of this locomotive, it's the case. The reason I love this locomotive. One, its cosmetic differences. I don't know why. Look, if you look at any normal 060 with a tender, you'll see, just a blank front, which with just the pilot, a smoke box, and just a high-mounted headlight and a circular number plate. This locomotive is a completely different game changer. One, the air compressor for the locomotive on these, and as a standard, is mounted on the front, which makes it look like it has a goatee. And
now, see the comparison there, Jim? There's barely any differences.
And, well...
What's the class of it, though? Because I'm looking up USATC 060, can only find the S100s.
No, it's not USATC. It's US. I think it's just standard U.S. Army engines.
U.S. Army 060. Let's see. What do... damn it. Why does there just have to be such a weird class?
Well, while they're trying to figure that out, as I said about the cosmetic differences, and not to mention when she was put into excursion service, the centered headlight she was given. And the high-mounted bell, it made her look like, it's like if you take, I don't know, like a very small car, let's say like a Beetle, and you give that some of the most beautiful shit ever. It's astonishing. And not to mention, the crews loved her. She, they said that you could put anything behind number 9, she'd haul it. They'd do it. And quite frankly, she did. She almost did.
Well, the U.S. Army. Okay, it was built. I know its original number now. It was originally built as 616. Now
616. Well.
No, wait, ex-USA 4023. 4023.
Which is ironically the number of another big boy. Anyway.
Well, yes, the youngest surviving big boy and the only Type 2 big boy. But then again, we're kind of getting off track.
Yes. Talk about number 9 for us, or Andrew.
Well, as I said about the reasons I loved her, and, love her, about the cosmetic differences, but as well as with just such small amount of footage and audio, we barely have number 9. I love the sound of her working hard on those railroads. I mean, if the Ohio Central operated 33 with only 3 coaches. Any photos you find of number 9, she's hauling at least 5 coaches at least, and it's a stunt. It's amazing, and not to mention, we'll talk about this later, but she's coming back in a new life. But before I get into that, Owen and Ryan,
I found the official SMS website, so I can give you some information about it. So it was originally built for the U.S. Army as number 4023 in October of 1942. She went to moving military freight at Fort Dix in New Jersey. Later in her military career, 4023 was renumbered.
Funny word.
Yes, Fort Dix. Okay, it's D-I-X. But as I'm saying, it was renumbered 616. Some suspiciously very similar to the S-160s, and was transferred to the Army's Fort Eustis, Virginia base. By 1958, the Army was retiring some of its steam locomotives, and 616 was a part of this group. 616 and 2 of her sisters, one of them we all know as 4039, was sold to the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway, based in Piney River, Virginia. The locomotive number was changed to number 9, and has been that way ever since. 4039 was numbered 5, by the way. Used in freight service until 1964. The VBR eventually purchased 2 diesel engines, and 9 was out of a job. Ow, I'm back. Oh, I hit my head. Anyway, new work was found for the engine when Steam Trains Inc. purchased her for tourist service on the New Hope and Ireland Railroad. Wow! In Pennsylvania. The engine ran briefly in late 1966 and in 1969. Backing up 460 number 1533, was out of service by the early 1970s, sitting on a side.
Don't you mean 460, 1533?
460, 1533. Anyways, number 9 was used as a backup for, starting in 1976, 9 was usually used as a backup engine to the NHNI's regular engine at the time, 280 number 40. This was the case until 1981. In the mid-1990s, 9 was put up for sale. Sitting for several more years in New Hope, it caught the eyes of SMS Rail Lines president, Jeff Such. Jeff, as several other SMS Rail Lines employees, had spent time on the NHNI, and some particularly on number 9. In 2009, SMS Rail Lines purchased number 9 and moved her to the SMS locomotive shop in Bridgeport, New Jersey, with the interest of restoring her back to operation. The engine faces another new life.
And now,
what she was built to do, hauling freight.
And now the best part is, just days ago, she was fired up for the first time since 1981. And
for the first time in 50 years.
Meanwhile, the bad news is I can't find a complete list of the track that ever related geometry.
But either way, with number 9 coming back, and not to mention for freight service being one of the very few steam locomotives in the U.S. to actually primarily operate freight, it's going to be an amazing thing to see this locomotive return in more and better than new condition as well. Not to mention falling into it's going to be wonderful, especially since we have so little footage of it. We have so little information. It's going to be beautiful seeing this locomotive run again.
Oh, and guess what? It's not going to be the only steam locomotive. And Jim, I can actually give you some values since I'm looking on the 4039, which is the same exact class.
If you're going to mention the boiler pressure and the diameter of the driving wheels, I already found that. 190 psi, 44H driving wheels.
Wait,
there's
44?
No I don't know, but there's no statistic for the locomotive's cylinder size and the total tractive effort number. So that irritates me.
But yeah, number 4039, of course, is
a sister locomotive.
Yeah, and it's also being restored at the Whippany Railroad Museum, albeit their restoration has been taking much longer time.
But yeah, there's obvious reasons I love number 9. I love switchers. I have a soft spot for switchers. I mean, you could tell with 1187.
Oh, Jim, and guess what? I just found out the class. It's the S1515.
S115.
But yeah, I have a very hard soft spot for switchers. I love switching locomotives. Small, compact, and powerful in some points. And not to mention, in certain areas, they're perfect for excursion service. In fact, they're the 3rd most restored wheel arrangement in America, with the others being 484s and 280s. But as I said, it's hard not to love this locomotive. The colors, the life, the history, and of course the amount of power and joy this locomotive had. It's just it brings tears to people's eyes to know that she's coming back.
Well, I just asked a question on one of their new videos asking how big the cylinders are. So we'll never know in time.
Well, anyway, though. You guys ready for number 2?
Number 2?
Number 2.
Ah, yes. And this one I'm going solo on because I know the history of this locomotive in and out. Number 2. Alaska Railroad S-160, number 557. There are hundreds of reasons I love this
Another US
locomotive.
Army locomotive.
Yes. As I said, hundreds of reasons. 1, the interesting and twisted history. 2, I love the cosmetics of it, and not to mention the beautiful striping. 3, it's an S-160, and you know how I like my 280s, especially the unique ones. And, of course, well, this was the last steam locomotive to ever operate for Alaska Railroad. But I'll get into that in a little bit. As you know, during World War II, the starting of it, the whole bombing. But did you know that there were actually 2 places that were bombed? There was Pearl Harbor and New Harbor, Alaska. And so they sent over a lot of S-160s to help with the effort, 557 being one of them, of course, in which they served the Army for quite a while. And even after the war, they still purchased more S-160s. The 557 served them well for the longest time, along with 556, which is also preserved. Albeit kind of...
They sunk 4 ships. Meanwhile, the United States threw the sun at them twice.
Basically.
Well, here, hold this.
All country destroys the sun.
Thanks. Also,
Yes?
if I may butt it briefly,
Yes.
production run and tractive effort. There were 2,120 of them built between 1942 and 45
By Baldwin, Lima, and Alco.
4 builders, and we have a pair of 19 by 26 inch cylinders, boiler pressure of 225 psi, and driving wheels of 4 feet 9. That's 51 inches. 51-inch driving wheels.
That's actually wrong. The driver diameter for the S-160s is 57 inches.
Oh wait, I counted wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, the diameter for the drivers is 57 inches. But anyway.
Yeah, sorry, 57. You're right. I got it wrong. 57 inches. Sorry.
It's okay.
Keep going.
Well, tell me the tractive effort once we get to, well, I'll just tell you when. But anyway, on with 557's story. So, after dieselization, as we all know, most of the S-160s were sent directly for scrap, but not 557, because that locomotive was retained for special passenger excursions along the Alaska route, in which she did very, very unexpectedly well on, in which they pulled her out on special occasions, including the Alaska World Fair, which was her last excursion run. Afterwards, she was stored in the Alaska Roundhouse for quite a long time, but then they ended up needing her quite quickly after that, because they found out that the Alco diesel locomotives traction motors were not waterproof. And you know, with Alaska, with the flooding, yeah. And so they had no choice but to fire up 557 again and use her to provide shuttle service through the high water. While the Alco diesels waited on high land, 557 went back and forth, moving the passengers and freight around, which I think is one of the most legendary things I've ever seen a steam locomotive do. And then after that, well, she's continued service for another 5 years in the water. And then the Alco diesels had their traction motors waterproofed, and so she was retired again. but this time she was almost sent for scrap, with her sister locomotive 556 being chosen to be put on display in a park. Well, 557 was sold for scrap, but luckily she was saved by a person who bought 557 and placed her in her House of Poverty Museum, in which she stayed for the longest time until the guy sadly passed away. But that was when 557 was sent back to Alaska and returned to the Alaska Railroad under one condition: she be restored and returned to service, doing the job she was intended to do. In 2015, the 557 was put on Alaska rails for the first time in over 30 years, with much fanfare. And when she was arrived, she used one of the old engine houses of the Alaska Railroad and stands just feet away from the actual main line, in which she has been going under a hefty restoration to return her to better than new condition, with a lot of new upgrades, such as PTC stables, and not to mention an oil firing, if I've heard correctly, in which the locomotive will actually be operating on the main line. But yeah, as we speak, this year they're planning to put the drivers back underneath the frame of the locomotive, and the restoration is going full steam ahead. So chances are we'll see this U.S. Army veteran operating very soon. But yeah.
What's number one then?
Oh,
I can already tell.
Here.
Well, before
Let's just say that number one, you could have seen this one coming a long, long time ago.
yeah.
Is it Reading 2100?
Yes, it is. But before we go on to that, a couple of honorable mentions. 1309, 3767, or I mean, not 3767, 3967. 3759. What else? Oh yeah, 774, and well, 4014 I admire. 765, 759, 2716. What else? What else am I missing?
Don't forget.
Wait.
Is there any other L9 locomotives that you do like?
Oh yes, 19.
Wait, 19?
19 and 29. Yes. Oh yeah, NNW 570.
18 and 29?
Oh yeah.
18 and 29.
NNW 475. Wait, was it 476 or was it 478? NNW.
475. They were
578.
Oh, yeah, 578. Okay, and well, of course, Mallard. Of course, we gotta love. Anyway, Omaha.
2253, the red S160.
Yes, Big Jim, and a ton of other S160s. NNW 2174, NNW 1218.
Gimpy 3985, probably.
I mentioned 3967, but I do like 3985. What else? Oh yeah, Milwaukee Road 2.
McLeod River locomotive?
Milwaukee Road 261. McLeod River. What's it? 9.
This is actually, we're trying to get off track again, and
Yes.
before
1925?
let me actually quickly just mention how many T1s were made.
Yes, number 1 is Reading T1 number 2100, in which there were 30 T1s built. But originally they were built as the I-10A, you know, the 280s with a big firebox that is bigger than your mama's hip somehow.
Please.
Okay.
So, yeah, the Reading's T1 Northerns, there were 30 of them made between 1945 and 47, collectively numbered 2100 to 2129. But they were built before as consolidations, and you can go into greater detailing about that.
Yeah.
So they were rebuilt from 280 consolidations into 484 Northerns, and you may explain why later.
Yes.
So 30 T1s built in total, between 1945 and 47. Cylinders, there were 2 of them, 27 by 32 inches, boiler pressure of 240 psi, and 70-inch diameter driving wheels, which together produced 68,000 pounds of tractive effort. And apparently it could be boosted to 79,100 pounds of tractive effort when a small booster unit is started up. I don't know where this booster unit is, but I won't find out because I am going to bed.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I'm leaving you guys.
Well, that's fine because we took our time,
Right.
but anyway, we'll see you later then, Jim. And I guess I'll finish things off. We already know the story of the T1s, the Iron Horse Rambles and all that. We did, but but what I'm going to tell you is the real reason I love 2100 out of the 4, specifically 2100, which has the strangest story, the most obscure story, the smallest, the weirdest story of the prototype locomotive. 2100, as we all know, was the very first T1 built. And originally, she was actually built as an I-10A 280 consolidation in 1923, being numbered 2020. Ironic. Until, of course, she was rebuilt in 1945 as a Reading T1. And we all know how it goes from there, with the Iron Horse Rambles, being a parts donor for 2101, going through several owners, including the Lionel Trains executive owner, and then with Thomas Paine and all that.
My least favorite part of its owner exchange scenario is that it was briefly owned by the Ohio Central Railroad. Then Jerry Jacobson allowed it to fall into the wrong hands.
I mean, he didn't know better.
Well, the thing is, from what I learned from Forrest Nace, who is one of the guys who volunteers at the 2100, they're actually very grateful for Thomas Paine because he actually saved all of the coal-burning parts of 2100. So if anyone wanted to convert 2100 back to burn coal, they could. But anyway, we all know that 2100, after being sent to Canada and being converted to burn oil, then going to Washington, being left outside for like about a decade, and then going to the American Steam Railroad and Preservation Society. We all know that. But
no, we don't.
One of the greatest things is, of course, seeing more than one locomotive haul the same train. The footage of 2100. The minimal footage that you get is her entire family. Her 3 family members running side by side with her.
Double heading as well.
Double heading, triple heading, even. And
wait, triple head? There was what? Triple heading?
Yep, triple heading.
Wait, did that actually happen?
Yep.
On the Ramble?
Yes, that did actually happen.
No fucking way.
I'm gonna need some evidence. I'm gonna need to see some evidence.
Well, anyway, though, 2100 has always been my favorite because she has no community, and I can love her as much as I want. With the beautiful yellow striping, with the slightly off-centered headlight from the center, which points more up than down, with the semi-symmetrical cab, and the high-quality coal that she burns, and the great amount of tractive effort and beautiful running and reliability.
Actually, the thing is, the 2100 actually didn't burn anthracites, believe it or not. And people may be surprised to hear this, but by the time the T1s were built, most big locomotives had stokers on them, right? Unfortunately, stokers don't work that well in big engine with anthracite coal. I mean, it's called hard coal for a reason, because it could potentially break it. And the specific fireboxes the T1s use, I think the only reason they were even equipped with the Wootens is they were leftovers from the 280s. If you notice that every other 484 on all the anthracite roads, such as the Lehigh Valley, the Delaware and Hudson, even, none of them actually had Wooten fireboxes. And even the Lackawanna. Why? Because they didn't need it.
Yes.
Because they were all fed by stokers.
But yeah, we all know most of the stories of 2101. We know 2101 and 2102, but not many people.
There's something I don't get then.
Yeah.
2100 has been fitted with a stoker this whole time. How did it fail to burn oil for conversion?
Well, yeah, because remember, it was given an oil burner from a P2 Mikado, a Canadian Pacific P2 Mikado to be specific.
No, you mean the British P2?
Which means that.
I need to get that clear.
Which means.
Andrew.
But yeah, with 2100 being one of the two outcasts of the Reading T1s, with 2124 being famed because she, is at Steamtown. But 2100 being, the very first one is completely underappreciated, especially since without 2100, 2101 most likely wouldn't have been restored in 30 days.
I will say this, though, about 2100. It has gotten a lot more attention nowadays because
Restoration.
Yes, and not to mention the fact that they're publicizing every single month about it. Unlike the Reading and Northern, which has remained extremely quiet about 2102, even though leading us to, resort to, what is it? Oh, yeah, secondhand sources.
But yes, 2100 is my favorite because not only does it have an underappreciated story, it has an interesting one, and not to mention that it is the oldest T1 in existence, and not to mention one of the most underappreciated. And also, side note, the only Reading T1 to ever be fitted with a visored headlight.
Actually, that's not true.
That's not true.
Because
2101 and 2102 were on that site as well.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
2102 actually wore one in 1972.
But you get my point, though. And not to mention,
Yes.
2100 is the only locomotive on this list that I've seen in person.
Mm-hmm.
And the only one that I have a real part of right here.
Yes, one of its
Stables.
Yep.
I'm actually planning on going to see her when I go to CBSR for my birthday.
Yes. Oh, and also, one more thing. Happy early birthday, Andrew.
Thank you. Well, thanks for sticking with me through this wholly 2.5 hour stream.
All right.
Well, anyway, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this. We will see you guys next time, whether we're just talking about random things or we're doing a top 10. Or maybe, if I have the equipment, we'll be doing... Oh, Jim!
He's gone. He left.
No. Look in the chat. Look in the chat. He put 9,000 PSI with a winky face.
Yes. You gotcha.
I had to do that real quick.
Really?
Jim,
Really? Good night.
go fucking down.
All right, so
But yes, we will see you guys next time.
And always remember, if Andrew gives you corn, don't eat it. It's poison.
What? What?
Don't you play shit with me. Don't you play shit with me, Andrew.
I think this is where we should end the stream.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed this list, and we will see you guys next time.
Next time.
All right.